for the continuance of the American dream and for our future. And so I can't tell you how excited I am to be here, to have a chance to speak with you, and that all of you are here. And I have to tell you, when I came in I was rushing a bit. I had to jump a kiddo off at church and then jump on the parkway. Of course, the parkway was shut down. There was just one lane. So I was trying to get here, and I come to the hotel, and there are men everywhere. Wait a minute. I thought I was speaking to women. And don't get me wrong, I love guys. I love speaking to men as well. But there's something special about conservative women, I think especially during this time period. So I am privileged to get to speak with you today. As I was thinking and praying about what to talk about, a verse came to mind, and that's when Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and he says, I have come that they may have life, and that they may have it abundantly. And this type of life that Jesus was talking about giving us, it comes from this root word zoe, or bios. And it means this sort of life that's fully alive, that's abundant life. That's not just sort of making it through our days and doing the best we can, but living fully in the moment, knowing that we're pursuing the God-given mission that he has set out for us long before we were even born. So that's sort of my question to you today. What does it look like as a woman to live this sort of Zoe life, this abundant, all-encompassing life? And I think that can look different for us at different times. My mom was famous for saying, that life is one of seasons. So are there seasons of tiny kids where you don't sleep a lot? There are seasons of being a taxi driver where you drive kids all over the DMV. And there are seasons of really buckling down at college or in your job and in your career. And so I think that it's such a testament to what women can do, to see all of you in this room and thinking about that today. So I wanted to start with just a little bit of my story, and hopefully you might find encouragement in it, in that you don't have to have it all planned out, that God does have that plan for you. As Olivia mentioned, I was an animal science major at Texas A&M University. I absolutely loved college, but I am squeamish. The idea of becoming a vet was something I'd always wanted to do. It's what my mom had wanted to do, and so that was sort of my career goal since I was a young girl. But I had a course in college. I taught some 4-H camps, and got to keep her for free. And she was a young filly. She had what are called wolf teeth in the back of her mouth that jangle against their bit and are painful. So being a cheap college student, they needed to come out. I called the local vet school. The vet school sent out a student to take out the wolf teeth. It was not pretty. That day, I decided I am not going to be a vet. I can't do it. I can't pull out teeth from like a stricken horse's mouth. I just am not going to be able to do that. So what next? And that really was something I had to consider because I've been dead set on going to vet school. And so that was a really scary time period. I was a senior in college, and what do I do? And it's kind of a funny story, but I took the LSAT thinking, I've watched Perry Mason. That seems like a pretty cool job. So why not try law school? But I was still torn between law school and sort of the science background, and perhaps becoming a professor in genetics or something along those lines. So I went to speak with my favorite professor at A&M. It turns out both his son and his daughter had gone to law school. And he said, go to law school. Do that. If you want to come back, I'll substitute it for your master's. You can go on and get the PhD, and life will go on happily ever after. Which was the best of everything, right? Because I didn't have to close off any options. So I went to law school, and it turns out I loved it. And I think the reason I loved law school so much was there was sort of this tangible reality. I guess two things. One, as you guys all know, I was not politically engaged as a high school or college student. So you know this better than I do. But the laws and regulations that occur, most of them here in DC, but some around the country, do impact regular people on an everyday basis, more than we realize, especially with the regulatory agencies. But a second thing is, good lawyers matter. I remember going to a training as a young lawyer at a young law firm, and they were sort of teaching us the tricks of the trade, just for expert discovery and depositions and those sorts of things. And long and short, like, it matters whether you have a good attorney. So that turned sort of allowed me to see, like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be a lawyer. Went to law school, became a lawyer, and then the question is, what next? Well, again, you can sort of see God's hand in the mix. I clerked for a judge. I was telling Olivia, I managed to get to know, we met in law school, but I managed to get to know my husband, clerking for Chief Justice Roberts. We like to tell the story that there was this tiny office, we were both in it, and we didn't have time to see or meet anybody else. So what were we to do? But loved getting to know him back here. And again, something that never would have happened if it would have worked out as I would have planned, and I wouldn't have become a veterinarian. Fast forward, we moved to Missouri, both take jobs as professors at the University of Missouri, and have 2 boys. And that's where I really wanted to sort of dive into this. When we had these 2 boys, Josh ran for Attorney General, won, and then just a year and a half later was invited to run for Senate. So really busy time period. And during this time period, I did something that was really difficult. I stepped back from my job as a law professor, took an unpaid leave, did a research fellowship, but was able to mostly be home with my kids, as well as be able to do some things to help Josh with camping. Now, let me tell you, that was really, really hard. I'm someone who, and all of you are used to sort of doing the next thing and doing it with excellence. And I love my kiddos, but let me tell you, it is a lot easier to go into the office where it is quiet and peaceful, and I can get my work done, than to be at home with 2 or 3 toddlers who, as much as you might like them to behave like rational adults, are toddlers. So there was that whole dynamic in play. But the reason I'm telling you this is my husband ended up winning, as you know, and now we split our time between Washington, D.C., as well as Northern Virginia, and mostly in Missouri. And we've had our 3rd daughter now. With our 3rd daughter, I was working part-time at a law firm here in town. I was like, I only have this limited amount of time to work. What am I going to do with that? And I joined Alliance Defending Freedom. And Alliance Defending Freedom is a religious liberty nonprofit. We represent churches, we represent university students, we represent states like Mississippi in the Dobbs case. And it wasn't long after joining ADF, I was actually supposed to be quarter-time, that my boss comes to me and says, we're going down to Mississippi to talk to them about what we could do to help with jobs. The Supreme Court had just granted cert in that case. So I said, I've got this infant, what do I do? She said, bring her along. So I brought Abby along on the trip to Mississippi, and our babysitter was also coaching several various girls' teams. So she flew down after me. Of course, her plane ends up being late. So I'm going into the first meeting. Abigail needs a nap dreadfully. I'm literally running her up and down the halls of the hotel. She finally goes to sleep mercifully. I put the cover over her bassinet, park her in the corner, and we're good, right? She's asleep. She'll be asleep for a long time. We start discussing, what had happened since the Supreme Court had decided cases. And the short answer to that is an awful lot. The court had changed dramatically. Justice Barrett was now a member of the court. Justice Kavanaugh was now a member of the court. So we were deep in the weeds of discussing how these individual justices might look at different arguments. And crucially, whether it might be worth it to ask the court not only to uphold Mississippi's 15-week law, but to go all the way and to overrule Roe versus Wade. Well, so we're in the middle of these conversations. I'm a relatively new employee at ADF, and Abigail wakes up screaming, bloody murder. So I'm trying to comfort her, trying to continue having these conversations about the various cases and how they might play out before the Supreme Court. And it was a little embarrassing, I won't lie to you, to be trying to do that at the same time. But the reality is that it also could not have been more perfect. Because Abigail that day, she's super cute, curly red hair, I'm completely biased. But the reality is that she's not any more precious, any more loved by God, any more worthy of life than any other child. And I think she showed us all in that room that day what it was we were really fighting for, what it was that each and every child in America is entitled to, at a minimum, the right, the most basic of rights, the right to a life. And it also was so encouraging to me. As I mentioned, I had stepped back. And the reality is that I never would have been in that room. I never would have been able to represent Mississippi in the Dobbs case, especially as a mom. If God hadn't orchestrated all these sort of circumstances in a way I never could have expected or planned out. So, get to represent Mississippi. I'm a part of the legal team. Abby and I fight all over the country. And as you know, there's a special day, at least in my mind, that comes before the June decision. And that was December 1st, when the United States Supreme Court heard the Dobbs case. There is an amazing Attorney General in Mississippi. Her name is Lynn Fitch. And she made the brave decision to ask the Supreme Court to overrule Roe in its entirety. Not to just pare it back, but to overrule it. And she took a lot of heat, even from really sincere, pro-life religious liberty attorneys who were worried that the Supreme Court wasn't yet ready for it. But I loved her response. Her and her Solicitor General said, you know what? We represent the people of Mississippi. The people of Mississippi voted to protect life. We are going to defend that to the full. And they did. So Scott Stewart argued at the United States Supreme Court, and it became clear that day that the Supreme Court might really overrule Roe. Justice Kavanaugh asked question after question saying the Constitution is silent as to life. You know, shouldn't we stay out of it? Justice Barrett asked questions pointing out that a lot had changed since 1970. That every state now has a safe haven law where if a woman is unable to parent for whatever reason, she can offer her child up for adoption, no questions asked. So it was clear that these two justices, at least, were interested in reversing Roe. Of course, we know, thankfully, at the end of that story, the court did overturn Roe, and it overturned a disastrous legal precedent. In dissent, that decision, Justice White described the Roe decision as nothing less than broad judicial power. That's really an understatement. For those of you that have taken constitutional law, well, maybe not in all universities, but the reality is that a true vision of constitutional law acknowledges that Roe is absolutely untethered to any constitutional principle. Even pro-choice legal scholars have long acknowledged that. So the question is, Roe was absolutely lawless. There's no right to an abortion in the Constitution. So why did we arrive at one in Roe? And what has changed, we hope, today? And to me, it really is about what it is, what it means to be a woman, especially a conservative woman, but any woman. So let's listen just for a second to what 7 men in Roe told us it meant to be a woman. They said, and I quote, that motherhood forces upon women a bleak and distressing future. A bleak and distressing future. Fast forward to Casey. In the Casey decision, we get a plurality of Supreme Court justices, so that means 4 justices in this case, or 3 of us, and one of those was Justice O'Connor. Now, Justice O'Connor has long been a hero of mine. She graduated 3rd in her class from Stanford Law School, right behind Chief Justice Rehnquist, who she also briefly dated at Stanford. Talk about a small world. They both, of course, end up on the Supreme Court later, but when Justice O'Connor graduated from law school from Stanford, 3rd in her class, she couldn't get a job. She was offered, finally, a job as a legal assistant in a law firm, eventually proved herself, despite, again, being 3rd at Stanford, and got a job as an attorney. But one of the things I've most admired about Justice O'Connor is hearing about her from her 3 boys. She had 3 boys, which makes me admire her all the more. And her boys tell the story about how she was sort of the neighborhood captain and would organize all these games, these hordes of boys going in and out of the house. Sounds like a wonderful childhood. But I really love that she took a few years off. And then she negotiated with the prosecuting attorney's office to work basically 3/4 time for half pay so that she could also invest in her kids. So I love this example of sort of living, and it doesn't have to look that might look different for all of us at different times, or your situation might not look ever precisely like that. But she made that choice to pour into her family while also pouring into the gifts that God had given her. So what happened in Casey? We have this personal testimony of a woman who had raised her family well, who had graduated third-year class from Stanford, who had risen to the pinnacle of the legal profession, become the first United States Supreme Court Justice who was a woman. I mean, here she is faced with one of her most consequential decisions in Roe versus Wade. So what that opinion says, and what she wrote in part, was that some of us might not agree with the decision of Roe. I think that was probably Justice O'Connor, who didn't agree with that decision. But she said she was going to uphold it, slightly modified as Casey did, because women have come to rely on abortion for social and economic equality. That's the view we get of women from Justice O'Connor and the Casey decision. Fast forward to the Dobbs decision, and that same view of women can be found in the Dobbs dissent. Justice Kagan pins for herself, as well as Justice Sotomayor, the fact in her mind that abortion is necessary for the economic and social equality of women. So that is our question today. What is it to be a woman, to live this full life? And is abortion necessary to that? I think the clear answer to that is no. We see that from an example from Justice O'Connor. We see that in an example of Justice Barrett, who has 7 children and is a United States Supreme Court Justice. We see this most powerfully in the examples from our own moms. My mom was one of the smartest people I know. She ended up raising cattle on a ranch because that's what she loved, but also raised her 3 girls. And in that life, we can see her sort of encapsulating the calling that Jesus says, store up treasures for yourself, not as the world sees them, but treasures that will not rust, that the moth will not eat, treasures in heaven. So I would challenge you today that the only way that this sort of dim view of womanhood, this dim view of motherhood is correct, is if we only value the things that the world values. If this sort of short-sighted nature or vision of feminism as we have to become exactly like men in order to succeed is what's true and right. We all know deep in our core that we don't have to become just like men to be successful. To the contrary, we created in the image of God, both male and female, and we have individual designs and skills and attributes that are specific not only to us, but also to women. So where do we go from here? What does it mean to be a woman and to step into that fullness? The short answer is that I can't tell you what that will look like for each of your lives. But I can tell you, based on my own experience, based on my mom's experience, based on so many women like Abigail Schreier, like Justice Barrett, like Justice O'Connor, that you all have a unique opportunity, I think in this generation in particular, to step into that full vision of womanhood, to be able to step into your callings as lawyers, as doctors, as professionals, but also to be step into your calling as moms, and to realize that that is an invaluable contribution that you can make as well. And it might look different for all of us. It might look messy. I think my assistant had the title of this talk as something about how to be a successful mom for a woman or something like that, but I just laughed, but that's fine. But the reality is that it's messy, but it's beautiful. And I wanted to leave you just with this one anecdote, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions. But we have 3 children. Elijah's 11, Blaze is 9. He's a holy terror. He's lots of fun. And then Abigail, our daughter, is 3. And we have a dog, a puppy, a Labrador puppy. Do not recommend Labrador they're supposed to be family friendly. And this poor dog has been through a very lot in the last few months. It started off, we were gone to spring break back in Missouri. Our neighbors who are wonderful kept him, and he got this small cut on his tail. It got infected, we wrapped it because I'm supposed to be an animal science person, wrapped it too tightly, so then the end of his tail falls off with part of the bone exposed. So then I take him to the vet, and the vet says, okay, we've got to do a tail surgery, but she only takes off like a tiny little bit. And this is a Labrador puppy. So even though I have him on enough sedatives for like a horse, he still bites at his tail, gets his tail, it doesn't heal. It dies again, and his tail dies. So they have to do a second surgery. So now at this point, the tail's about this long, and he can still get it. I had like 4 cones on him, all of these sedatives, and this poor dog. And then the worst, well, not the worst, but to add insult to injury, he's been on antibiotics for about 3 months solid. So, messes his system up, and so all of his hair starts to fall out. So this poor Labrador puppy with, this bobtail, which is now, thankfully, is fully recovered, but he still doesn't have much hair. And Abigail is, we've been doctoring this dog for months, and so Abigail one day is petting him and doctoring him, and said, oh, Abby, maybe you'll grow up to be a doctor like your aunt someday. And she looks at me and she says, no, a mama. And I just love that that's what she thinks a mom is. It's someone who takes care of what needs to be taken care of. It's someone who heals. It's someone who provides. And I know that's certainly true of what my mom did. So I just wanted to give you guys the courage, or encouragement, I should say, to follow God's call in your life. It won't look exactly the same. Some of you may work full-time. Some of you may stay home full-time, or it may look like some messy mix in between. But all of it is valuable to the Lord. And don't let anyone tell you that anything you're doing as a woman is a bleak and distressing future. That is untrue. I am so proud of each of you that you are reaching into the calling that God has on your life, and excited to see the new generation of conservative women. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for you about what you think we should do. I know we have a lot of legal challenges right now in the pro-life movement. We've lost a lot of momentum, unfortunately, after Roe v. Wade. What do you think the best strategy is legally when it comes to the abortion pill and when it comes to abortifacient contraceptives?
Absolutely. So there's a lot in that question. The first thing I'd like to say is that I agree. I think we are losing some ground as we see with the amendments taking place, the constitutional amendments throughout the country. So it really is an effort. We have to change hearts and minds. And the reality is that if you ask women who had abortions, the reason for that, the primary reason they say, 70% of them, that they would have chosen to parent, that they would have chosen life if their circumstances were different. So this is so contrary to what we hear from the other side. But it's also hopeful. And then it gives us a chance to change those circumstances, to invest in policies through our church or through the state that allow women to flourish through pregnancy and beyond, even if those are unplanned. So while it's discouraging, I think that's really a key point of hope, is that abortion, for most women, is not something that they choose willingly, but because of circumstances. And then you also asked about the abortion drug. So I was privileged to represent a group of pro-life doctors and argue that case before the Supreme Court. As you know, that case did not go as well as we had hoped. What the court said was that we had failed a legal technicality, that because the doctors didn't themselves prescribe mifepristone, that they couldn't challenge it. Now that's supremely disappointing, because especially if you look at the FDA's decision in 2021 to take away even a single doctor's visit before women can take mifepristone, it's outrageously dangerous. We know that about 1 in 25 women go to the emergency room after taking the abortion drug. That number goes up under FDA's own studies that are relied on when you don't have that in-person visit. You don't get to screen for gestational age, for ectopic pregnancies, other things that can be dangerous. So the good news is that there's some states that are still in the lawsuit below. They have a different argument for standing, so my hope is that that case will continue and the court will actually get to the merits of that. So that's the hope and prayer. In addition to that, a new administration could look at those FDA decisions and say, there's, regardless of one's view of abortion, it doesn't make sense to mail these to dorm rooms without any doctor ever having seen a woman. That's not good medicine.
Thank you so much, and God bless you.
My name is Zoe. I go to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and I was wondering what you think we, society, can do to start appreciating women who choose to stay home full-time, because I know there are women who choose to be full-time working, full-time, stay-at-home mom, or a mixture in between, and I'm all for women who want to work. I don't think they just have to be at home all the time, but there seems to be this narrative that, oh, she's just a stay-at-home mom. Like, I have a friend who, she has 3 younger brothers that are identical triplets, and they're a year apart, so it's like, they had 4 toddlers under the age of 2. That's not just a stay-at-home mom. Like, that's a full-time job. That's harder than a lot of other jobs that we have in the world. So how do you think we as a society should start addressing motherhood? I think it needs to be appreciated more.
I agree completely. And as I mentioned, it is much easier to be a lawyer than to be a mom. And I think that's probably said for pretty much any profession. Motherhood is so consequential. You are literally raising these children who could die at any minute if they jump into the swimming pool. Not to mention, shaping their hearts and minds and souls. So agree completely. One thing I would say, it's a little bit off topic, but we need to have an economy and a culture where you can have stay-at-home moms. For many families, it's not an option. So we need to have pro-family policies that allow that to happen. And then frankly, for anyone who doesn't think being a mom is work, I would invite them to my house or more on point to your friend's house. So I think as women, we have to encourage that. I think sometimes we're our own worst enemies. One of the law firm partners I worked with as a young associate, and she was like scary good and also just scary. But she was telling us a story that I think she came back from maternity leave after having her second daughter after a week, and she was again an outstanding lawyer, but she was laughing and saying that her kids, they were supposed to take something for school for a bake thing and baking, what do you call it? Bake off, whatever. And bake sale, there we go. And so her daughters told her teacher, my mom doesn't make cookies. She makes money, which the young associate was so horrifying. Like, what if I want to make cookies for kids? But I think we just, as women, also have to support those moms. I think about Abigail Schreier. She was a colleague of mine in law school. We were actually TAs for the same class. And brilliant woman, chose to stay home with her kids for a number of years, and then publishes 2 best-selling books. So that there are seasons in life, but I think we as women need to value stay-at-home moms. Culture needs to value stay-at-home moms, and then we need to have a society that allows for stay-at-home moms.
Hi, Ms. Hawley. My name's Erin. I'm going to Union University for fall, but I'm from South Carolina, and I recently talked to my representative from my district, and I asked her stance on abortion, and she talked about how she's very pro-life, but after the second semester, and I don't necessarily consider that pro-life. So my question is, how do we approach our representatives or other people who are pro-lifers but very lukewarm in their opinions?
Yeah, I think that is a problem we're seeing throughout the country. And if you look at the polling even before Roe fell, it showed that a majority of the country was, quote unquote, pro-life, that they disagreed with the abortion regime allowed by Roe, and for good reason. That regime was more extreme than almost, I think, but a handful of countries, 7 countries, including China and North Korea. So that's the sort of policy we had under Roe. So we can change that now. And we can, I think again, we have to start with voters because our politicians are going to be representing those voters, and we have to convince them that life matters. Life doesn't only matter at 12 weeks when babies can likely feel pain, but it matters before when they have a heartbeat. And I think the science is on our side. The science says that, you know, at conception you have a child, fully human, fully alive, and we don't condition any sort of work based on the size or dependency in other circumstances. So I think we have to start with the voters and work from there.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erin Blomquist. I'm from Mount Liberty College in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I really appreciated Zoe's question, which is similar to mine, but more on an individual one-on-one basis. I go to church with some incredible young single adult women who are moving on in their careers, they're in law school, working full-time, and it surprises me how often, even in a Christian environment, they talk about how they don't want to have children or they don't want to be a stay-at-home mom, or kind of chuckle at the idea of being a trad wife. And I was just wondering what advice you give as we go into one-on-one conversations with these incredible women. What talking points or messages can we carry that might soften their hearts towards that way of life?
That's a great question, and you know, I can even sort of relate to for different reasons. My family was a mess growing up, and so for that reason, like, I don't want kids. Like this is just too messy. It's too hard, and probably some of the women, or you know, that feel that way you referenced, have those sort of backgrounds as well. But the reality is that being a mom is the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It's the hardest. But to have Abby, who's 3, you know, say she wants to be a mom, is really sort of just drills down what it is, what's important that I'm doing. Not that other things are not. And part of it's, you know, part of it may just be experience. But for women who have children, I think, you know, the vast majority, hopefully all of them, would say that is the most impactful thing that they've ever done. And it's certainly the biggest responsibility and duty, but also the greatest joy. I just can't say enough good things about being a mom. It is again, the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's absolutely worth it every single time.
Hi, I'm Katie Hewlett, and I'm from Brigham Young University in Utah. When you were being introduced, they mentioned your book about what your children taught you about the heart of God, and so I wanted to ask you for an example about what you feel like they taught you about God.
Oh, sure. There's so many things. So as I sort of alluded to, I did not grow up babysitting. I thought kids were not my thing. And you know, went to law school and was very career oriented and focused. And so I had these kids. I really had no idea what to do with them. So it was an uphill learning curve. And it was difficult at times as well. As I mentioned, I kind of stepped back from career focus. And that was tough, in addition to just sleepless nights and things that come with looking after young kids. But in the midst of that there was just this really tangible reminder, I think, from God, just about how He viewed my relationship with Him and what I could learn from kids. So just to take a few things, if you think about kids, like we go on these little walks just in our neighborhood, and the kids would find a frog, or one time we found a dead mole, and they were so overjoyed. Like just the joy they would find in the smallest, tiniest things is something that you know is hard to capture or hold on to as an adult. If we're talking about our prayer life, kids are not afraid to ask for really big things or really little things. And I think that tells us a lot about what God wants to hear from us. Like one time Elijah, my oldest, asked if I would get in the mood. Like, sure, I'll grab the mood for you. But I love that bold asking. And then for me, I think that the most powerful thing is just seeing how my young children, I mean, science shows us that young babies, there's actually no separation they don't realize between themselves and their mom. So there's this real attachment, and that's why they get quite scared if their mom isn't there. Over time, of course, they realize they are a separate person. But even young kiddos, like, they just want to be with their parents. And that taught me so much about God and how He just wants to be with us and how we should just value that relationship more than anything. So just a few things.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniela Villavicencio from Queens College in New York City. And so my amazing boyfriend and I are planning on getting married probably in the next 2 years, hopefully, and having children as well. So obviously, New York City is very liberal, and it's really hard to have people around us that support us. So what advice would you give couples like us who are already trying really hard against the people that are around us?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just applaud you. That you're choosing to do something that's good for you and for your future family, and the Lord will bless that. And then I'm thankful you're here, that you can be surrounded with some like-minded individuals that can encourage you. Keep in touch with them throughout life. And then moms groups are great. As you have children, I would encourage you to get plugged in at a local church, and whether it's often they'll have Bible studies with a little bit of childcare, which is really nice because you have an hour to visit with women, and someone takes care of your kid in Kid Wonderland. But take those opportunities to get involved with other women who are in similar circumstances. So I know there may not be a lot of them in your situation right now, but find them and then keep in touch with these ladies.
Thank you.
To Mrs. Hawley for such a wonderful, wonderful message that I think every woman and man in our culture needs to hear. Well, my name is Lauren Herzberg, and I am the program officer at the Claire Booth Luce Center, which means that I get to work with lovely young women like you through our student programming. And I want to thank you all so much for being here with us today. And I really hope you enjoyed Mrs. Hawley talk about the importance of being a mother and about balancing that with being a career person. Now, before everybody heads out back to the conference, I want to tell you a little bit more about the Luce Center and all of the programs that we have available to you. So we work with students on their campuses, at our center in Herndon, Virginia, and at key locations around the country. Through our campus lecture program, we help young ladies host conservative speakers, people like Mrs. Hawley, Abby Johnson, Liz Wheeler, and we work with young women to host these people at their universities. We also take groups of college women to the gun range, where we help them exercise their Second Amendment rights through what we call our Day at the Range program. In addition to our Day at the Range program, we also have an incredibly robust internship that takes place at our office outside of DC in Herndon. Our interns dive into key policy issues through research, they experience mentorship from our amazing staff, and they receive training in law, public speaking, etiquette, and journalism from leading conservatives from around the nation. We equip our interns with courage, confidence, and most importantly, a strong community of conservative women. So don't hesitate to ask one of our amazing interns about the program. Ladies, raise your hands. There they are. Ask any one of them. I'm sure they'd love to share. And we also are taking applications now for our fall internship, so I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that. Now, the final program that I want to highlight for you all is our highly popular student summits. These events give you the chance to meet your conservative superheroes and connect with other young women who actually share your values. Our summits are so important in reminding students that they are not alone as conservative women. And I'm excited to share that our next summit is a multi-day event in Nashville, Tennessee, and will feature Allie Beth Stuckey, Paula Scanlon, and Liz Wheeler. Registration is open now on our website, and we really hope that you'll join us this November. And be sure to also follow our Instagram, which is @CBLWomen, to see updates about all of our events and programs. Now, we're going to get together for a group photo in a few minutes, but first I want to ask you all to scan those QR codes that you have at your tables. There's also one up on the screen there. These will lead you to a feedback form. We really, really value your feedback about events like this, so feel free to tell us all your thoughts from today. So take the next 5 minutes to fill those out, and then once you're done, we're going to come up to the front for a group photo. So thank you all again for being here, and we really hope to stay connected to you to help you be empowered, to live happier and freer lives. Thank you all so